Sup? Welcome to Tales Tomorrow. I'm Morrow, your storyteller for today. With me I have some more RPG horror stories. You know what's a horror story? The fact that I'm a D&D VTuber and I haven't done a stream in a hot minute. I really need to do that. Maybe I'll stream some Final Fantasy. Or maybe I'll stream some of the D&D games. I don't know. I'll figure something out. We're gonna go ahead and get into the first RPG horror stories for today before my brain melts from the heat. Man, it's so hot right now. GM killed off my PC in the epilogue. Hey y'all, title is the TLDR. The GM killed off my PC in the epilogue in a kinda messed up way, and to be honest, not sure if I'm being dramatic about this, but I wanted to get off my chest regardless. There was 4 of us, Paladin, Monk, Rogue, and me. Most of the campaign was great, a blast of a time. GM was great, but the ending for the Rogue and me felt like a slap in the face. The only person to get a good ending was the Monk. The Paladin drank a potion of Dragon's Majesty to defeat the BBEG, and flew off as a dragon due to a failed wisdom save. The Monk went off to take care of the land with a childhood friend turned partner. Admittedly, these were bittersweet narrative satisfying endings. Good for them. Things get a little scuffed when it comes to the Rogue and I. Our PCs had known each other beforehand. We were going working through some relationship abandonment issues due to backstory. During the last session, we finally managed to fully resolve things during downtime, and our silly critters worked together. GM asked us what we imagined happened during the epilogue. We said some cute stuff about honoring the Paladin and setting down some roots. After that, the GM was like, well, that's not what actually happens. You get your arm cut off in the middle of the night and are murdered. Good lord. Bro, if you just gotta give him that, if you just gotta give him that ending, why even ask him in the first place? What would you like for your characters? Oh, that's interesting, because that doesn't happen at all. You lose your arm and you're dead now. It's just so jarring. That talk about setting down roots and being together and being cute lovey-dovey. Nope, you lose your arm and you're dead. Also, I'm not laughing because of the circumstance. I'm not laughing at the OP. I'm laughing at how jarringly fast and quick turnaround, just a 180 flip the DM went through with asking the players what they want to do, and they're like, oh, but that doesn't happen, this happens instead. Rogue was like, well, it's happening in our house, I'm gonna stab him. GM shut that down, and anything else we said suggested our characters would do, effectively robbing both of us of our agency just to kill off my PC for what I assume was shock and angst factor. I'm already upset because I feel like my PC was killed at the very end for no reason, but also because ending the campaign in this way effectively threw out the entire character arc for both the Rogue and myself. Something you can always do is decide for yourselves what your character ending is, and then take those characters to a different campaign. Maybe continue the little story arc and stuff, but with a more decent DM that's not gonna just kill off your characters for the sake of killing off your characters. Shock value can be pretty fun and stuff, but you gotta use it like respectively. You gotta have some sort of respect to it. You gotta have like a twist, a turn around, not just be like, you die. What a twist. After the session ended, GM was gloating about how they won D&D because it was so upsetting and like the part isn't that big of a deal, but it was incredibly condescending and it just rubbed salt into the wound. If your DM is talk about winning D&D, they already are a failed DM. The only way to win D&D is not to play against your players and have them be killed off, it's to play with them and tell interesting, compelling stories, winning together, playing together, writing stories together, not winning by being like, oh my god, I killed a PC, I win. No, it just makes you look like a dickhead. I talked with Rogue and Monk after, and I also felt like it was a cruel, but I don't know. I want an outside perspective because we're obviously biased due to our attachments to our PCs. Admittedly, I was and am more than a little attached to this PC, as this was the first finished campaign I've played in, and I was really happy with their narrative arc, pre-epilogue. I have another campaign lined up with this GM, but to be honest, I don't really trust them with my characters anymore. Losing all control I had over my PC and having them killed off for angst broke a lot of the trust I had in this GM. But I'm not sure if I'm being dramatic because the rest of the campaign went well. Well, let me just ask you this. When I talk about Game of Thrones, what do you remember about it? Do you remember the compelling characters, the epic storylines, the incredibly gruesome twists, the characters you loved to love and the characters you hated to hate because they were just so sick and twisted and horrible? No. You remember the ending and how the last season was a complete flop and how it was just a failed attempt at trying to wrap it up in a nice little bow tie that was just a complete shit show. Even though the entire campaign went great, you're always gonna remember the end because the end is the most potent, and if it ends terribly, then that's the last memory that everybody will have of it, and it will make the entire story beforehand, even if it's good, it's still gonna be not as potent and not gonna be as juicy as how the end tasted. And if the end tastes bitter, it makes the entire thing feel better. Anyway, I would find a different DM to play with because clearly this DM sucks. Let's move on to the next story for today. That guy thinks it's okay to say the N-word during campaign prep. So recently I was invited by a friend, GM, that I hadn't gotten to hang out with frequently in the last couple of years to participate in a Pathfinder campaign set in the Mwangi Expanse, which is inspired by a combination of African cultures, alongside a couple of people that he had been befriending for a couple of months. We'll call them That Guy, Racist02, and Doormat for reasons that will be evident later. While developing backstory for my character, I asked the GM how to pronounce the name of the magic school that we would be attending in-game through the group's Discord server, as I'm unfamiliar with the languages that were used for inspiration. He gives me a response and all is well and good until That Guy decides to chime in with his alternate pronunciation, which ends up as N-word for 10C. 10 century? 10 cents? I don't understand. Understandably, I was shocked, so I decided to ask what the absolute frick was going on through his head. That prompted Racist02 to say that he saw absolutely nothing wrong with That Guy's statement and started mocking me. Understandably, this whole ordeal made me leave the server immediately, and I'll do my best to summarize the individual conversation with each of the members. From DM, he told me that he is sorry that I was made to feel uncomfortable, at no point acknowledging or denouncing the overt racism. That guy, hey, come on, I'm not like that, I was just trying to be funny, you know, that I'm actually a bigot, right? Yeah, cause racism is so funny, wow, so hilarious, wow. That is a racism I'm fine with, like if somebody wants to dig at me because I'm a tiefling in-game, yeah, perfectly fine. Because it's a great time for Morrow to be like, well, you can freak off, butthole. But you know, in the proper speech, I'm censoring myself because YouTube overlords are listening and I don't want them to strike down the good thing that we have going on here. Racist02. He basically told me that he can't be racist because he isn't white. Two very important things about that are, one, that's absolutely not how that works, and two, he also is very much not black. Everybody can be all racist. Racism is not defined by which skin color you are, like IRL and stuff. You could just be racist at anybody. You could be a sexist at anybody. You can be a bigot towards anybody at any time, and nothing gives you a pass. That's how the world works. Doormat. She just said that she kind of falls to social pressure when this type of thing happens, and that she hopes to see me again in the future. Regardless to say, I will not be playing with this group and feel like I dodged a tactical nuke by getting out of there before the campaign started. Disclaimer, I'm not a native English speaker, so apologies for the awkward grammar, and the conversation happened in Spanish, so I did my best to convey the meaning of what people said. But rest assured, that guy did very much type the literal N-word. Well, at least you got yourself out of Dodge before things got very hairy. That's good on you. If you find yourself in a group that you just know you're not gonna mesh well because people are being bigoted, racist, sexist, or whatever, and it makes you really uncomfortable, your time is better spent doing anything else in the world. Literally anything else in the world. Watching paint dry. Or watching a Tales Tomorrow video. That sounds so, like, self-centered. I'm sorry. Let's get to the next story for today. Insane DM ruins the fun of the game with dumb rulings and gameplay decisions. So this game started around a year ago with 4 players in, plus the DM. The players are Bard, me, a Paladin, Wizard, and Sorcerer. DM is running Waterdeep Dragon Heist. Everything goes fine for the first 3 sessions until Sorcerer has to leave the game because something in real life. The next session, their character gets abducted by a mind flare, and we defeat some other guy and level up to level 2. Cut to around 7 months later, we still haven't leveled up, and there hasn't been a combat encounter since we leveled up to level 2. I mean, the least the DM could do is run milestone. If y'all accomplish a certain goal throughout the couple of months that you play, just give you a level up. Simple as that. I am a big supporter of milestone. I don't think XP is going to be that potent. XP kind of requires you and kind of pushes players to want to grind things out to like ad nauseum, but I'm a big fan of milestone. I think milestone's nice. Not only that, but I'm also starting to get bored of playing my Bard because I kind of created them as a joke character. This was my first campaign, and I wanted to start playing the game more seriously. Plus, he was kind of sexualizing my Bard just because they had a high charisma score. I get an idea for a new character and present him with my idea for a satyr sorcerer, and he seems to have no objection to me switching my character. However, before I can introduce my new character, you have to finish the Grand Melee, a combat event that he added in for fun that ended up taking 3 months to complete. It wasn't even that interesting. It was just running down a field and waiting for him to take the turns on the other 20 or so NPCs in the event as they fought each other. Wait, did he just make you play Battle Royale? Are y'all playing Fortnite? Are y'all actually playing Battle Royale? 3 months of this, by the way, and you stuck around through this. Why? Once that event is over, I introduce my character to the party, and my bard heads off to a bard college to learn magic, which was the way that we decided that my bard would leave the party. This is where the bigger problem began. Despite the fact that I gave him like 3 weeks before my new character was introduced, he claimed that I didn't give him enough time to prepare interesting stuff for my new character, so I ended up spending the next 4 sessions not doing anything at all, while Wizard and Paladin doing quests for the Zentarum Harpers in the Order of the Gauntlet. Then we move on to the Harvest Festival, a Waterdeep festival that lasts 3 days. Around the time that this starts, I say something in a sentence like, "It could be particularly interesting," don't remember the exact sentence, and he argues with me about why my character wouldn't know the word particularly. His reasoning was that my character only had an intelligence score of 8, but wouldn't be smart enough to know a fancy word like that. This is absurd for a few reasons. One of which is because it obviously is absurd, and the other one is that the ability scores don't necessarily affect how you roleplay your character. After all, your ability score are randomized, but your character's personality is up to how you want to roleplay it. This arguing lasts for the remainder of the session, before he ends up packing up and leaving at 5 when we usually end our sessions, without admitting that he's being absurd. Okay, yeah, 8 score should not be penalizing you for not knowing a specific language unless the DM specifically designed that to be as a rule, that if you have less than 10 intelligence, you don't know the word particularly. Is it going to give you like a list of words that you would know at level with 8 intelligence, or are you supposed to just keep going around until he barks at you about fancy schmancy words? When it comes to any sort of arguments, by the way, there's more than one person that's in the wrong. Like, I get if he, for example, decided to argue all the way through, like, not to OP blame, but he could have just let it drop it, right? You didn't have to argue the whole way, so y'all could just play some D&D or just get past it. You don't have to carry on a conversation. Like, clearly he's not gonna budge, but you have a choice of budging and just letting it go and just dropping the conversation, dropping the argument before it gets worse, instead of arguing until 5 p.m. when your game usually ends. The next session, we decide to look around the Harvest Festival when some kid randomly gives us a bag in exchange for a stuffed animal. We're not sure what the bag does, so reach into the bag and pull out a small puffball, which turns into a bear. Ask my DM if there are any books about items like this in any libraries nearby. I have the Sage background, and it tells me that the Sage background only works on ancient history. It doesn't say that anywhere in the description of the feature, and yet again we argue for the remainder of this session, only about 20 minutes, but still annoying. I end up deciding that it's not worth arguing about, so don't bring it up next session. And we move on to the wrestling event that he had planned. I think he's talking about a bag of tricks, maybe? I love that item. I, as Morrow, actually got a bag of tricks. It's one of the quests that Mary ran, and that was one of the rewards I was able to get. It was actually really cool. It's like a little bag of Pokeballs, except little fuzzballs, and I can toss out. It might be a badger, it might be a direwolf, who knows, but it's really cool anyway. The thing with this wrestling event is that he only allowed Paladin to sign up, so we end up sitting there while DM had a Paladin do 5 1v1 fights that each ended somehow taking about an hour and a half each. So Wizard and I end up sitting there for around 3 hours, being able to do literally nothing. After the event, I acquired a Bloodveil Vial. The DM tells me that after attuning to it, I've used up all of my attunement slots. This confuses me since the only other item I had attunement to is a Cloak of Protection. It tells me that my staff, which is a sentimental staff that speaks Draconic, has an eye that moves around embedding into the top of it, is using my last attunement slot. This staff is a family heirloom that I asked if I could have as part of my backstory, simply because I thought it would be a cool thing to add to my character's backstory, and he allowed. It doesn't do anything other than speak and look out of its eye, and yet he's saying that it needs my attunement slot. He says it's because I can expect to get free things from my backstory without any consequences, even though I only wanted it for flavor. And it's not actually providing any in-game benefits. Well, if the staff can speak Draconic, then I suppose you can have the staff speak to other dragons for you if you don't know Draconic, like maybe be like a translator. Can it speak Common? Can you understand if it like speaks in Draconic or speaks in Common? It does have an eye as well, so maybe, I don't know, you could probably learn Draconic, or somebody can learn Draconic, and maybe staff can give you some wisdom. I don't know, I feel like you and DM just really don't mesh well, and y'all just need to, you know, talk it out instead of arguing the whole time. I typically side side with OPs for these kind of stories, but in this situation I feel like both of you are kind of in the wrong. Instead of arguing about stuff and yelling at the table, you could always talk about it out of game. Why have an argument mid-session? We argue about this one for about an hour until the session ended. While arguing, he also tried to do other things such as changing my character's backstory and personality to make them have an item I require attunement makes sense. Okay, yeah, that's something definitely you shouldn't do, but I mean, it's just too weird. Like, why is this happening in-game? Why are you all bickering about this in-game? Why not just deal with this out of game and come to a amendable, amicable solution? I mean, clearly the DM is in the wrong, but arguing with him for the rest of the game, for the entirety of the game, is, I don't think it's going to be good for anybody else at the table. I feel bad for everybody else at the table because they just have to sit around and wait for y'all to argue. Clearly there's a lot of time wasting going on because the paladin gets to do the little like arena brawls and stuff, and y'all just have to wait for like an hour and a half just watching it. Clearly it's going to get boring. Clearly you have a DM that doesn't respect y'all's time. But why are you playing with such a DM in the first place? Why not just quit? There have also been many other small problems that have occurred over the period of this, which I'll mention here, most of which have happened multiple times or are still constantly happening. Trying to ship my new and old character together since they both have high charisma score, not leveling up the party in 10 months, we meet every week, that's over 40 sessions. Invalidating the usage of my spells by retconning distance so that target would be out of range, not letting me move my character to the correct spot when he put my mini 15 feet away from where I wanted to go, not letting me know the location of invisible enemies in combat even though they were making noise, making me roll checks for ordinary everyday things that shouldn't require one, making my new sorcerer character not start with any gold even though the rest of the party had hundreds of gold. Randomly changing up how abilities and mechanics work if he thinks it should work different way. Example, made it so that you could attempt to break out of a grapple using your reaction. Getting mad at me for strategizing during combat. Not letting me use my bonus action before my action. Getting mad at me for coming up with clever solutions to things. Wait, whoa, let's go back to the other one. Getting mad at you for using a bonus action before your main action. I'm sorry, but like, I'm pretty sure you're allowed to use bonus action before main action. Please tell me there aren't people out there that genuinely believe that you have to use main action before bonus action. I mean, listen, I'm not that experienced when it comes to the game itself, but I'm pretty sure you're allowed to use bonus action before main action and then move whenever. I don't think there's like a proper turn order, like proper movement order for that sort of thing, right? Well, unless I've been playing D&D wrong the whole time, then as far as I know, no. Getting mad at me for coming up with clever solutions to things. Getting mad at me for mentioning my backstory whenever something related to that comes up. Playing Brawlhalla, MTG Arena, and other video games during game sessions. We play in person. Okay, that's the one I'm gonna give to the DM. Playing other video games and doing anything else on the side while the session's happening, it's rude. Imagine you playing at a table and suddenly the person that's supposed to be playing with you is just not playing with you. They're just maybe off on the side playing Genshin Impact or Final Fantasy 14 or whatever, and then mostly pay attention to them grinding on those games instead of playing in your game and actual role-playing and stuff. That I'm gonna give to the DM. That is a rude thing to do, and I don't agree with you doing that. No matter if you're on your phone or playing other games or how simple the other games are, could be even like an AFK cookie clicker. It's still rude to do these sort of things and play other stuff when you're mid-session, regardless of how long the session is. Clearly you're not having fun, clearly you don't want to be there. So why don't you leave? Blame me for everything that he does and never admitting that he is wrong. You know, I'm gonna say something that's probably volatile and maybe people won't agree with me, but a lot of people that try to get everybody else to admit they're wrong have a hard time admitting that they're wrong themselves. And it's not a dig at OP specifically, it's just the kind of people that I've met over time that always want to be right and always get upset when other people don't admit that they are wrong. Before you can expect other people to admit that they are wrong, you gotta admit that you've been wrong in sometimes. And in these moments, honestly, I can tell you that a couple of things you've done are probably in the wrong and you probably shouldn't do. But to hold somebody accountable for their actions while not holding yourself accountable for your actions, I don't think it's the correct thing to do. At least in here, you don't seem to take accountability for your own downfalls and stuff. You just want the DM to basically say that they have a downfall, which is clearly they do. But like, this is a road that goes both ways. Communication gotta go both ways. If the communication is only one-sided, you just expect the DM to admit that they're wrong without you yourself admitting that you were in the wrong, then communication has a breakdown. You're not gonna get that communication. You're not gonna get a satisfying end because you guys are just constantly bickering, arguing at the table when you should be discussing and talking about this stuff instead of having a whole spat at the table, making everybody else listening to this stuff. Well, the DM is definitely in the wrong in these situations. OP, you are not completely and entirely blameless. And the fact that you can't admit that is honestly kind of concerning. I'm trying to figure out what to do. The other two players and DM seem to be having fun with the campaign, but if I were to leave, the campaign would die out since it would be left with only 2 players. The campaign is hosted at my house. kinda just made this post talk about everything that's happened, because I feel like obvious things to do is to leave the campaign. If it fizzles out because of that, it's not really my problem. I shouldn't have to stay in a D&D campaign that's actively giving me something to talk about to my therapist. Then don't be in this campaign. Don't be part of this campaign. Leave the campaign. If the other players still want to play, they can continue playing by themselves in different venue, a different place, or different person's houses. If you don't want to be in the campaign, just don't be in it. Not spending time in this campaign probably be better than arguing about it during session, mid-session. Leaving the campaign probably be a way better solution than arguing for this session. So just leave. Leave the campaign. Clearly you're not meshing well. Clearly it's not working out. Something gotta budge. You gotta get yourself out of there. Simple as that. And with that, that's gonna be all our stories for today. I want to thank you very much for watching, and thanks so much for being here. If you like what I do, consider subscribing to the channel and leaving a like. Also, if the RPG Horror Stories ever goes down, or if you want to submit your own personalized horror story, email is down in the description below. I'll see you again in more Tales Tomorrow. Bye-bye.